So what I want to say to Charles is, come home, Charles Krauthammer. Come home to the sad, necessary task of building a powerful containment and deterrence strategy against Iran. Of course, nobody wants an Iran with nuclear weapons. Of course, one wishes to place every obstacle in the way, put as much pressure as is possible. And of course, we want to have precisely the same strategy we had in the Cold War of containing and deterring them so that eventually we create circumstances where the young people of Iran can take their country back, and they will have acquired a desire for modernity and for an integration with the West and for freedom and liberty. And that is the course we are trying to move on. But there is no fantasy solution out there that says we cannot tolerate this, and we are going to go to war instead, and we are going to preemptively strike another country in the Middle East, and they will love us for it, and they will embrace us, and all of a sudden, the problems of the Middle East will go away because we will have gotten rid of that evil thing, deterrence. Alas, that isn't how it works. International politics will persist, international rivalries will persist, the Middle East will continue to be a complicated place. Haven't we just gone through a decade of 2 wars in the Middle East, both of which were sold to us on the promise that this was going to usher in a new era in which everyone was going to love the United States and the West, and all the problems that existed would go away. And yet we find ourselves in the same situation. So I say, come home, Charles Krauthammer, come home to the kind of reason and history and logic that you once so powerfully believed in and argued in. Don't give in to just because of the fact these guys are different and they're brown and they're colored, that somehow we have to have fantastic solutions.
Oh, Google, the things it allows us to find out about each other. Up next, Amos Yadlin. Sir, podium is yours.
Once again, I have to remind you that this debate is not about attacking Iran. This debate is about not letting Iran become nuclear, because the world cannot afford a nuclear Iran. It is not the same story. It is not really the same story as the Cold War. This is a regime calling for destruction of another country. I never remember the United States want to destroy the Soviet Union and vice versa. So it's another story. And I think people underestimate what will happen to the NPT and in what kind of world we will live after Iran will become nuclear. It's not the issue of deterrence vis-à-vis Iran. It's the issue of proliferation all over the Middle East. I'm a general. I fought in many wars. Nobody hates wars more than me. I have been there. I saw the blood. I saw the pain. I saw the waste of resources. I saw the cry of the widows and the orphans. We don't call for wars. We call for the world to wake up and stop Iran before it will be a nuclear war. And when you run out of argument, you speak about a war that nobody advocates. We advocate a very tough regime, sanctions regime against Iran, isolation, and have the whole world join, not only the West, the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, because Iran must be stopped. And Iran is not North Korea. North Korea is not threatening the whole East Asia or the Far East. They don't want to be the hegemon. Iran wants to be the hegemon in the Middle East. And what will happen after Iran will be the hegemon is very similar to what happened in Europe in the 1940s. And remember, we cannot allow it anymore. As an intelligence officer, you have to give 2 answers. What is the enemy capabilities and what is the enemy intentions? With capabilities, if you have good sources, you give good answers. How many Shihab missiles there? How many centrifuges spinning? How many kilograms of enriched uranium they have. On intentions, you have to be much more cautious. But the Iranians in the open tell everybody their intentions. They want to destroy Israel. We have to take it very seriously and to stop Iran from being nuclear. Thank you.
Dean Nasser, you're next.
Well, I take General Yadlin's cautions and warnings quite seriously, and I do think that there are important and stark choices that face us and will face the new American administration going forward. Obviously, we think of the biggest issue in the Middle East being Iran, not only because it's a dictatorial regime that is abusing its population, that is taunting Israel and its neighbors, that it supports terrorism, and now to boot it's going nuclear. But when we think about decisions about Iran, we have to also know that every decision has a context. The context is the following, that Iran is not the only issue in the region. We're also seeing a Middle East that is falling apart all across the board, from Tunisia to Libya to Egypt to Bahrain. Regime after regime is becoming unstable. We're seeing rise of extremism. We're seeing a major shift in this region. We're not going to be dealing with Iran in a vacuum. And therefore, the decisions we make have to be with view to what it means for the region. We're also dealing with a United States that is tired of war, that it has not done well in the two big wars that it conducted in the Middle East. It doesn't have a record to show for. It spent trillions of dollars, a lot of blood and treasure, and it has not been able to accomplish its objectives, whether it's in Afghanistan or whether it's in Iraq. And it's very clear that the Americans are more interested these days in nation building at home, as the president put it. These are important contexts to bear in mind. Now, hopefully, the Iranian regime will change, as Dr. Krauthammer and General Yadlin said. Hopefully, the administration will take diplomatically very seriously, and by some miracle, there is a breakthrough in the short run. Or that sanctions really change the Iranian government's mind and they change course. But the clocks for diplomacy, for sanctions, for regime change in Iran are not synchronized with the clock for building Iran's nuclear capability. It is quite likely, it's quite possible, that Iran may go nuclear before any of these things take effect, before sanctions, as rigorous they are, produce a result, or before there is a democracy movement. Then we're really left with two choices. We either find a way to contain and deter a nuclear Iran, or we go to war with it. And if we go to war with it, then we have to be prepared for what that war would entail. And it may very well be that it will be far more costly and far more destabilizing to the region than the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were. We started sectarian war in the Middle East. The Shia-Sunni war that our commentators lamented about was our doing. It is another war that is intolerable, is equally intolerable. Thank you.
Charles Krauthammer, you have 3 minutes on the clock and the final word.
So much error, so little time. But I will address 2 points. Yes, I believe in every word I wrote in defense of deterrence in 1984, dealing with the U.S. and the Soviet Union, and it remains true today. But the idea that some technique like deterrence, because it worked in one context, will always work is mindless. I would say to my friend Fareed, wake up to the reality that Israel-Iran is not U.S.-Soviet. Wake up to the fact that the nature of the regime is completely different, that the regime in Iran, unlike the atheistic regime in the Soviet Union, has an apocalyptic, millennialist idea of history and sees itself as the instrument of that. Wake up to the idea that in the 70 years of the Soviet Union, they never once sent out a suicide bomber. But for Iran, martyrdom is the royal road to heaven. Wake up to the idea that for the jihadists whom we are fighting around the world, in the words of Al-Qaeda, you love life, we love death. Try deterring that. Wake up to the idea that the nature of the dispute is completely different. Russia was an ideological contest with the United States. It never sought to wipe it off the map. Iran believes that the existence of Israel is a crime against humanity that it has to cure. And lastly, wake up to the idea that the Iranians themselves, the mullahs, have told us what they intend in a nuclear exchange. Again, President Rafsanjani, application of an atomic bomb would not leave anything in Israel, but the same thing would just produce damages in the Muslim world. In other words, Israel would forever and instantly be wiped off the map, whereas the Ummah, the Muslim nation of 1.8 billion people, would endure with some damage, but would endure. That is a radical difference in history between deterrence in the 80s and deterrence today. To mindlessly apply it and say, well, it worked in the past, it will work in the future, I think is completely unwarranted. And remember the stakes. We are assured by the other side deterrence will work. They don't know, and we don't know if it'll work or not. But imagine the risks if they are wrong. 6 million Jews dead, the eradication of Israel, hyper-proliferation in the Middle East, and Iranian domination of the Middle East and of the oil economy of the world. Do any of you want to live with that? Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's clear why people have called this debate one of the toughest global foreign policy challenges of a generation. We've had two sharply contrasting arguments tonight, eloquently presented by both of these teams of debaters. So a big round of applause for all of them. Well done. Well done. Now, let me reiterate something Peter Monk has said at these debates in the past. It's one thing to give a set-piece speech on a subject that you're intimately familiar with, quite something different to come in front of an informed audience like this and to make your case with passion and conviction. Now, the question in front of all of us is, which of these two teams of debaters has been able to sway public opinion in this hall? I'm glad I don't have a ballot because I think it's going to be a tough vote. But before we make that second vote, let's just quickly remember where public opinion was at in this hall at the commencement of tonight's debate. Let's have those results up on the screen. This is the percentages of those who supported the resolution, 60, against 23, undecided. And again, the next slide, we saw a large number of you who could potentially change your vote. So this debate is very much in play as you go to check off your second ballots. We will announce the results in the South Lobby before 9 p.m., where you can also purchase books of all of our past Monk debates. A great Christmas gift, ladies and gentlemen, as we enter the holiday season. And just finally, because this is our 10th semi-annual debate, a great accomplishment by the Aurea Foundation, let's celebrate a bit. We've included a complimentary drinks ticket. Enjoy responsibly, but have one on us in the South Lobby. Let's gather together shortly before 9 o'clock with the results of the second audience vote. Thank you again, everybody, for coming. It was a great debate. Thank you. Thank you. That was great. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Good debate. Really good. That's fun.